Welcome back to Leading Tourism's Transition. Today, we're diving into the fascinating world of data-driven decision-making in destination management. Our special guest is Omar Van Beek, the Business Intelligence Marketeer from Toerisme Veluwe Arnhem Nijmegen, or Toerisme Van as it's better known to other people. This is a regional destination that punches above its weight and is based in the Netherlands. And today, we're going to learn a little bit more about some of their brilliant work. In this episode, Omar is going to share his insights onto how the organization is leveraging data to innovate throughout their strategy, with priorities such as managing visitor flows and enhancing the overall experience for both tourists and local residents. We'll explore how the Visitor Data Monitor, a tool they've developed using GPS and demographic data to provide real-time insights on visitor movement and behavior, is helping them to do this. This tool has been crucial in helping them to shift from that gut feeling approach to decision making to having clear data-informed strategies, especially during the challenging period of the COVID-19 pandemic. We'll also discuss the sometimes very significant changes in data that help us understand what's happening in the destination. And this is really key to tourism's approach to destination management. In particular, we'll look at how this has shifted over the last decade and how Toerisme Van is building from the ground up a truly data-driven approach to managing the destination. Be sure to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts and stay tuned for future episodes because early in the next year, we'll be releasing a complete series on data, offering deeper insights into how various destinations are harnessing data to transform their operations. This is certainly one you won't want to miss. But for now, here's a little sneak peek into what one regional destination in the Netherlands is doing to lead the way in data-driven decision-making. So, Omar, great to be here with you. Tell me a bit about yourself and the organization that you work for and what your role entails.
Yeah, sure. Well, first of all, thank you for being invited and being able to do this. So my name is Omar Van Beek. I'm a business intelligence marketeer here at Toerisme Veluwe Arnhem Nijmegen, which doesn't translate well to English, so I'll keep it at the Dutch version. So my role is basically that the biggest part of my job is working on strategy, innovation, and I think about 70 to 80% of my time I spend on anything related to data. So we're focused on becoming a more data-driven company, basically. And I'm one of the persons that are working on this part of the business. So the company itself we're one of the largest regional DMOs in the Netherlands, and especially when it's service-wise, basically. And at the moment, also when it comes to the number of persons in the office. So we're at the moment about 45 staff and working on the 3 regions separately. But within the office, we're covering all 3 together, separating them between people. Like you're working for the Veluwe, which is one of the largest natural areas in the country. And then there's 2 cities, Arnhem and Nijmegen. And we also split them up, and certain people work on one city, the other one on the other, and have specialized also the roles within the company. So one of my specializations then together with my other colleague is anything related to data, which I think we're going to talk a little bit more about today.
Yeah, so you mentioned, first of all, being data-driven, and this is at the core of what you do. Tell us about how your role has changed over the last 5 to 10 years and what that really means today. Where have we reached in terms of being a data-driven organization?
Sure, yeah. Well, I think one of the interesting things, talking in general about the DMO, of course, is where before we were only working on marketing communication. We see now that the role is shifting a little bit more also towards the management side. And to be able to manage a destination, you also need to be able to see what's actually happening. What are the cases? What are the issues? And not only using your gut feeling to make decisions, but you need to actually have factual-based. You need to be able to make factual-based decisions based on anything that's happening within the region. So for that, we think you really need to have data to support that. So the big change has been mostly that because there's a shift going on, it's also very important that you make sure that you gather the data and get the insights you need to support what you want to go and which direction you need to go.
So what would you say are some of the starting points in terms of the problems where you've really seen the opportunity for data to start filling in some of the blanks and helping you to better manage the destination and support the 3 destinations really effectively through a data-driven approach.
Yeah, well, might be interesting to just give you a very concrete example of how we got to the point where we are right now. It started mostly, as with many things, during Corona, during COVID period, where, of course, many people couldn't do anything. So you were stuck at home, different countries, different rules. But in the Netherlands, there were a couple of weeks you were stuck at home. You couldn't go outside other than maybe visit some natural parks or, some forests. And that provided some interesting challenges, let's say, for the forestry, for natural, the maintenance, let's say, for the parks. Because there's a lot of pressure on nature, because that's the only thing you could do. So there was a lot of people going to the forest, and there was a lot of noise about how can we manage all these crowds. But it was also a bit of a feeling, not so much maybe a fact that it was busy. So we found a way, like, can we find a way to make sure that what's happening is actually fact or is just a gut feeling? So we started with a drukteradar, which is like how busy is it in certain areas. And it started quite easily with actually calling up like ranges, like how busy is it today? Is it very busy? Is it crowded or not? So still gut feeling more or less, but yeah, today it's very busy. Okay, so then we tagged that, and we had like a threshold, like if it's above or below, then it's busy, it's not busy. And then on a map we gave it a color, like red or green, or so today it's very busy in this particular forest, so maybe don't go there. So first dispersion thing we were working on.
So this really started with just human input. Okay, it's a good place to start, I guess.
Definitely a good place to start, but of course not very sustainable in a way, because you need to phone people. And after a few weeks, people started, I know, it's busy, in a way, like, just don't bother me anymore. So after a while, my colleague said, like, we need to find a different way. We need to find different sources, or can we find a way to make this more, data-driven, basically. And so then we found a data partner, which actually uses GPS tracking. Or tracking is a big word, but they use data from different phone apps. It's gathered, of course, GDPR is taking it high in account, otherwise you have big problems. But so it's made anonymous, and then using that data, you can actually see, using a geofence where you draw something on a region on a map, and then you can see what's happening in that location. So what we did is then the same natural areas, same attractions, just like, can we draw this on a map and see what happens then? Then you have to really set the thresholds on when it's red or when it's green, and so we did. And so we made this radar, and it was really popular. So it exploded because people were like, I can finally see a source which we can use, so we can finally know what if the forest this weekend is right now we're very busy at the moment. And can we actually go and walk the dog? And we need to be 2 meters apart from each other, and here it's possible. So actually it exploded, and it did really well. We even won some prizes with it because it was very innovative. And it was a consumer product, basically.
I was going to say, so the end user was the consumer. I mean, the interface is also really nice, and I think the user experience there, the ability to quickly see those hotspots and avoid them, it's really key to what the tool was intended for.
Yeah, definitely. And the focus was also very much on usability. And because a lot of the times when tools or dashboards are created, it's very techy. And we're like, no, it needs to be very basic. It needs to be very easy to use and understand, because this is not something you're going to spend an hour on. It's just you open it, you need to be able to see what it is. And within a few minutes, you go like, this is where I go, done. You're not going to spend a lot of time on it. So it has to be clear. So that was the high focus. But it's a consumer product. And after a while, we've thought like, we have a big data set here. What else can we do this? And what is the potential? And after a while, we saw okay, there's a lot of stuff in here which we can actually use also for different means other than consumers. Because, of course, also local municipalities or the province, or they were like, we have these set of questions, or we have these, as an organization, we have this set of things we need to work on. And we're like, is this something we can use actually to answer these questions, or to figure out if we can help the municipalities answer these questions, for instance. So we went through the whole data set, and based on that, we developed another tool which gave more insights in visitor movements, basically using this GPS system. And so we decided, okay, we're going to expand the number of locations we're going to track. So at the moment, we're tracking over 300 locations within our 3 regions, just to have an overview of what's happening.
It's pretty extensive.
It's pretty extensive, yeah. So we did most of the natural areas, like most of the national parks, or at least forester areas. We did most of the tourist attractions, or at least the larger ones, not the very small museums, and some locations are a bit difficult, but more into detail on that maybe later. But most of the attractions and most of the towns and villages and like the city centers, the core of that, just to give an idea of what are the movements, what's happening. So over 300 locations we're tracking right now, to give an idea of what's happening visitor-wise within our region. And it's something that wasn't done at the moment. More people are working on this, but in the Netherlands at the moment that was very new. So we were the first ones that using this system, and it gave some very interesting insights, and which actually also changed our way of approaching marketing even as a company.
Because I guess at the beginning, the focus was real time. So if you're in the middle of COVID, your biggest concern is, I want to go somewhere with less crowds. But I guess over time, as you've started to identify patterns and you can see the data over time, you start to see the impact of things like seasonality, different days in a week, maybe even different times in the day.
Yeah.
So how has this fed into your more industry-facing tools that you've been building since then?
Well, what happened is, like you said, it gave some more insights. We really went through the data and saw like, okay, what are the options? What are make it easy to read and use, but what are the options? What can we get out of it and translate into a nice graph to be useful for companies or for stakeholders? And there's quite a few things that are in the system which helped many of the organizations basically to answer some questions. And one of the things is, we have a very nice, interesting, it's a lot of colors and a lot of lines and stuff, but it's very useful where you can actually see per day, per hour, what's happening. So on a Saturday at noon, it's very busy in these city centers because people do their grocery shopping. Where in nature areas, it's Sunday. There's a peak on 11, for instance. But these overarching trends are very interesting to see and spot. And in a way, some of these things you already know, but now we can actually prove in a way that this is actually the things that are happening. And then connecting that to the insight we got that over 70% from many of the locations, the visitor that causes the crowds or that there's a feeling of it's very busy are the local inhabitants. It's not the incoming visitors. And that's only like 20 or 30% that get that feeling. So if you then connect those two together where you say, okay, the inhabitants are the ones that causing the crowds and they have a certain pattern of visiting certain spots, can we do something with that? So can we see if we can influence in a positive way, like maybe don't do your grocery shopping on Saturday, maybe move it to Friday or move it to the evening, or don't walk your dog at 11, but maybe do it at 2, or it's a dog, so he needs to go when he needs to go. But you get my point, where can we influence in a way through our marketing as a company or inform other companies or stakeholders or municipalities, like this is what's happening, is it something you can do?
And how far are we in that side of things? Because of course, we talk a lot about destination management and data. I think the whole tourism industry globally is really trying to crack this. So the assumption is that with this data, we can then influence or change those patterns, bring tourism up in those points where it's really quiet. It's really important for things like employability and all of these questions. And then, as you say, improve the visitor experience where perhaps an overcrowded experience is also a poor experience. We assume that marketing is always the solution to this, but how far have you managed to progress things in terms of starting to identify those problem areas and look for solutions that can actually change those patterns?
It's very, very difficult because I don't really agree that marketing is the answer. It is an answer to a certain extent, but influencing human behavior, because that's what we're talking about, only through marketing is impossible. You know, you can do only so much. And it's something we're working on constantly. Like also we do extra trainings internally, like how can we use certain ways of using the marketing, applying it and saying maybe certain things, don't say them anymore, which might be even more powerful than saying things in a certain way. So we do a lot of internal training on that, but that's a long road still to go. We have some things we worked on, and I think well, especially one of the things we decided is, okay, for certain areas where we know there's a big pressure on crowds at certain times per year, for instance, we don't mention them anymore. We don't promote them anymore for certain periods. And it's a little bit counterintuitive for an organization as like what we are, but still we do it because we know that by doing that and spreading it in time, it might be a little bit more easy, or at least you get the pressure off the destination. And at the same time, it's challenging because not only as us as an organization figuring out how we can use the data to have an impact in a certain way, the same thing applies to all our stakeholders and everything within the region. Like if there's data and there's a proof in a certain way that things happen, then it also needs to land at a particular person or particular institution or what that can actually handle and do something with it and also accept it, that this is a fact. And there it's a bit of a challenge, of course, because in a way people are a bit traditional. So we've only always done it like this, and then getting to a point where it's actually people saying like, okay, this is what we see, this is what we're going to do with it. It's a long road. So and that's not something that's like it's in a process, let's say, basically.
So I guess there's a really key learning here is that, identifying how you can gather that data, working with that data and incorporating it into something that can visualize and help others to interpret is only part of the way there. The rest is about maybe advocacy, storytelling around the data, and then the whole process of innovation to rethink product, to rethink even pricing for attractions, and think about all the different ways in which you can influence those negative patterns and shift them. And as you say, not only marketing, but the product has to really respond to whatever problem has been identified.
Yeah, definitely. And there's of course also a mix of stakes or the commercial businesses, you have the municipalities. It's all, it's not easily connected. Sometimes the things they want are different.
So building a solution is part one.
Yes.
Change management, stakeholder management, it's an entirely different thing.
And entirely different beast, yeah.
A lot of that is out of your control. Perhaps there's opportunities to influence, but ultimately these are decisions that have to be taken elsewhere. So tell me a bit about how you've continued to work with data. I know you've developed a visitor data monitor, and you've also built solutions that can be used by the industry on a wider scale. So tell us a little bit about what has followed that.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so after having this consumer visualization, let's say, we also made the business-to-business version, visitor data monitor. So we briefly mentioned before already, like we created a whole dashboard which is now being used by a number of our stakeholders, a number of our clients basically. So that's mostly municipalities because they see a lot of application use for this. There's a few commercial companies that say like, yeah, there's a few things in here that might be interesting for us as well. But we also have some organizations that are for natural preservation. For instance, they also see stuff like, okay, yeah, there's some interesting stuff in here as well. So we actually turn it into a partly commercial dashboard where they have to pay for access because we also need to make some... we're DMO, so we can't make profit anyway, but it's a system where we can at least earn some money back to innovate continuously because we can use that money back into the system and then continue on developing it to make it even more.
So you create a sort of license model for the industry.
Yeah, and it's two ways. Like we have a simple payment system in a way for anyone within our regions. Within our 3 regions, and we also developed another system where other DMOs, for instance, within the Netherlands can also use this system in a white label option. We have 2 options actually. We have white label only the visitor data monitor system, but we developed the whole infrastructure also together with the visitor data monitor. This is one of the visualizations, one of the tools, let's say, we are currently developing. But there's a whole infrastructure below it as well, and we're also in talks with some DMOs if they want to use that as well, and then will probably be a license model.
So tell us about the data that comes into that and what kind of features that you've built out within that platform.
Yeah. At the moment, it started with mostly the GPS data, and it's still one of the core functions of the system. And on top of that, we also grabbed a number of demographic data. So then you can not only see where the visitors are coming from, how many they are, how often they come, and what their patterns are in when they visit, which times of day. But we also added the demographic data to show who they are. So there's a national demographic tourism model in the Netherlands, Leefstijlvinder it's called. They identified 7 specific personas, and we integrated it within the system because we can connect it actually on a postal code, let's say. So now we have a whole model, not only who, like how many, etc., but also who the people are, which is very interesting, and that's being used quite a bit. And at the moment, we're redeveloping more or less our infrastructure on the water, basically, to make it even more flexible and to be able to add a lot of extra data sets. We have an overview of a number of them, and as soon as that's finished, we can add more data into that as well. And then we'll go to more national data as well, or provincial data on overnight stays, number of guests, maybe modality. So how are they coming here? How long are people willing to travel to get to a certain location? So we have a whole list of plans already to, once that's finished, to add to the system and to expand on it as well.
So starting with the persona data and obviously the GPS data, what's the correlation? How do you make those connections between visitor density and the visitor flows and say the different personas and who's visiting? How do you make that connection or correlate that data one with another?
Well, technically it's then linked to postal code. And then when you link it to postal code and you see where people are coming from, then you can also see like hotspots, like on a heat map, like, for this location, we see that most of the people are actually coming from, I don't know, Amsterdam or Rotterdam, or maybe it's more local. So then you can actually see the attractional worth, like what's the range of attractiveness of a certain spot.
Yeah.
Because you can then calculate it based on the data you see. And if we can see, like for certain hotspots or for certain locations, most of the people come from a certain area, a certain province, certain city. As a company ourselves, we can use it to hyper-focus our marketing efforts.
So you can sort of draw demographic conclusions then based on that data?
Yeah, based on their movements. So we can create, like more or less some kind of heat map, basically, where you can see. We don't actually put it on a map right now yet, but we can actually see like, okay, this region is more focused on this demographic, and this is more for this demographic. And so one of these 7, and if we have a marketing campaign, we can actually see, okay, if we would do this marketing campaign, we can actually, most of this persona is from mostly these regions. So if we want to do, I don't know, for like a specific marketing campaign, we can actually say, okay, then focus on this and this and this and this and this, and ignore this part before, for instance, just to have again, hyper focus on seeing if we can reach the right people at the right time.
Yep. So I guess like with any destination, the domestic market is really interesting because I'm imagining you see certain patterns at weekends, maybe Amsterdammers, people coming from Rotterdam and other big cities coming here and having a big influx. And then during the week, maybe something quite different. And then I guess throughout the year, you'll probably also see very different patterns in terms of who's spending 3 or 4 days here versus, those that come for 1 day or 2 days.
Yeah. Then at the moment we can only see per day, but we're hopefully we can add also like insights in overnight, because it is in the data in a way. It depends on the definition you put on how long people are staying, etc. So we're working on that. But yeah, definitely you can see seasonalities, you can see different trends, and you can see different ways of movement of people. And yeah, 70% we found then is local. So our marketing efforts also changed. Like a couple of years back, we decided to make a split within our marketing efforts, where before it was only getting people here, like maybe not as much as possible, but at least get them here. And after we saw like, yes, over 70% is local, then maybe our marketing efforts should not only focus on getting people here, but actually also serving the ones that are here and the people that live here, because people that live here are also doing their tourism activities when they're here. They're also visitors. They have different roles. So we split actually our marketing campaigns and our marketing efforts, our branding marketing, etc. We focused and we split them really heavily on, okay, this we can do and this we don't. And this, like for instance, getting people here, we do promote accommodation. But the other one, where inspirational campaigns, we call them, you don't need to focus on accommodation because people are already here. So that by splitting this already caused a very different shift in ways of thinking on how we approach marketing.
And that's really interesting because I think traditionally we've always had our eyes on the money, which has always been hotels, accommodation, maybe the big attractions, perhaps driven, at least on an international level, by the very nature of DMOs being often membership driven. So that's being key. But I think what you've highlighted there is a value that you can create at a hyper-local level in encouraging people to go out, to appreciate what they have on their doorstep, to spend time and money in the local destination, which is, of course, a really key aspect to the sustainability, especially in those low or shoulder seasons.
Yeah, and again, the funny thing is then it actually already happened. The only difference is now we're aware of it, because this is not a new thing, basically. It's just new that we know about it. That's the funny thing, I think, about it.
So you can better shape your strategy and activities around it, as you were saying, considering how you communicate to different audiences on a more granular level. So if we think about the future and the potential to build in other data sets, what excites you about where this could go? It's still early days. Right?
Yeah, well, definitely. Well, we have a whole data strategy for the next few years, let's say, where we want to go. So we decided also, like, our destination consists of more than just your visitor, of course. So we decided we want to have 6 tools, basically. One is then the visitor, the other one is your local resident. So, and that can be not only as a tourist, but also they have impact and they have certain feelings about tourism. Can we make the tool for that as well? So then we can measure or see, or if it's research or data driven, or at least can we see what they feel and what they want and what they need, and just link that again. The same thing with, we want to look at how many hotels are there, how many campsites are there. Funnily enough, in the Netherlands, it's not well organized. It's very granular, so everyone has a little bit, a small piece of the pie, but there's no one overarching insight in what is actually on offer on tourist-wise. They're working on it now on a national level, but we were working on this already a bit longer, so we've probably in a next few months we have this ready as well. So then we can actually have the demand also from the visitor we have in view, but we also have what's on offer, and then we connect them to as well. Another few things we're working on is we're having insights in events, because it's a large impact on your destination, and also working towards maybe having a natural monitor, like what is the impact on the destination and what is the state of the nature in a way. So we hope to bring it back down to what's the CO2 footprint per visitor, per region, per municipality, so that you can actually have the sustainability part in that as well. So we have 6 of these things planned with as an overarching idea, bringing them together to get a certain state of your destination at a grand scale, let's say.
And so that sustainability aspect is obviously a really key priority for many obvious reasons. So I guess the hope is to become the complete intelligence, not only in terms of tourism in this kind of blunt term that we've always referred to it as, but in terms of the whole destination, the leisure and the visitor economy that sits around that.
Yeah, that's basically the goal. And then by having that system, tool, whatever you call it, the dashboard, it's useful not only for us, because that's great, but mostly also for our stakeholders and everyone within the region that can hopefully benefit in one way or another. And if it's a commercial model, then it's a commercial model, or we haven't figured that all out, but at least have a certain sense of what's going on at the destination. And by measuring it, by having it, by being data-driven, by having the oversight, you can actually see what needs to be done, and also important, what we should not do anymore. So that's the long-term goal here.
So I see a lot of destinations also thinking in the same direction. How much do you see your role as a leader in the Netherlands, maybe also internationally, in terms of setting up what you've already done and where this could go, but also advocating a data-driven approach or creating the right infrastructure and tools that can be shared or used by others?
You mean if we are willing to share like the insights or?
Yeah, I guess, do you see yourselves as a beacon? So one that's kind of going out in front and testing and piloting some of these new approaches so that others could perhaps learn from that and even use, and as you say, there's the commercial development behind that as well.
It has never been our goal to be in front,
Yeah.
but we found out that we are in front. Yeah, there's a lot of other destinations that are working on this as well, of course, but we found that it has been difficult to find others that are also doing this at the same speed as we are doing this. In one way, it's fine. It's nice, oh, we're doing something which is not being done, and we're doing it well, and etc. And at the same time, there's also a very big question, especially for me. Like, I need more information because I need to validate more or less what we're doing, if that's the right track we're on, or do we need to shift more to the left or more to the right? And at the same time, I want to learn from others. Like, what are the lessons learned? What did you do to have this? And that's why we also decided, like last year, I think, or the year before, that we want to go more outside the Netherlands and go more to other events, like from Digital Tourism Think Tank or other events, just to get some more insights from others. How are they doing it? And at the same time, also sharing what we're doing. Like, we also recently went to an event from City DNA. I also was on stage there with some of the things we did and learned. So we're also trying to share what we're learning in a way.
Now, one of the things I would love to get your views on is the sustainability of data. So a lot of destinations invest heavily in licensing data, licensing telecoms data, licensing credit card data. And there is a feeling that that's not sustainable, or at some point, once you've added 4 or 5 licenses on top of each other, you find you're using up your entire budget on data that you don't own. How is this data monitor different? I think you've really built the infrastructure to directly own and gather that data, right?
Yes and no, because we're also still relying on we have a data partner that provides us with the GPS data, for instance. The demographics data is national, so it's public, so that will remain. So that's not a challenge. But the GPS data, we have a very good relation with this company, so in a way that should be okay. But it's a lot of money still. We need to pay for it. So in a way, we run into the same issues. On top of that being that, it's GPS data, and the whole discussion around GDPR and expanding on first-party cookies. But that whole thing is also going to impact, probably on the long run, this GPS data, which is at the moment very crucial for us. So we're also looking already ahead and seeing, like, is there another way which we can solve this? Is there other ways of having this data at first maybe alongside, but if something happens? So there's a contingency, let's say, where we want to say, like, okay, if this happens, so we're already thinking about that as well. Because we say, data is quite a challenge, but that's why we're also looking at some of the data sets to use it are the ones that are from the National Statistics Agency, for instance. And there's also some organizations in the Netherlands that are working towards a standard set of data, which we will always need in a way. So we can go to the Ministry of Economic Affairs and say, listen, we need this data set and we need it for multiple years. So just put it on your budget, because this is something we need every year. So the consistency on the data, and by using that and making sure that it's for the long run, then at least you have a certain basic set of things you can show and use. And then on top of that, you can always use your research, and you can use the other incidental sets. Let's say maybe that's 2-3 years, but at least you have some extra insights. So it's a challenge for sure, but by looking at certain standard sets and maybe expanding on those, then you can at least have a reliable long-term solution to having these insights.
So this is really key for that kind of dependency on data in the long run.
I think so, yeah.
Look at where it's coming from, how we can assure its consistency, affordability, and really integrate that as something that we can rely on permanently.
Yes, I think so, yeah. And it's always a challenge, because also national-wise, let's say, there's always a fight on, can we continue this? Should we continue this? Or there's an organization that always did the research and then stopped. Or, that will always remain a challenge. But I still feel like if you have a certain basic set ready, then you can continue, and then along the way you'll find out and you figure out new ways to get the insights, or maybe different insights to answer the same questions. Basically, it's what we did right now as well. So I don't feel very nervous about finding another solution in the future. I think there's always a need, and there's always companies or organizations or whatever that will go like, I'll work on this, and you can use it, and because you pay us for this, and So I think in a way there will always be a solution for some of the questions we have.
Now, lastly, it seems like the world of destination management and development and the world of destination marketing seem to coexist in parallel worlds, usually in the same office. And I see this at every single destination that I meet with. And both teams are really driven to be data focused in everything they do. Do you see an opportunity for those two environments to come together when we think about data, so that we can see a more direct impact from marketing data on the destination and vice versa?
Yeah, well, I think here at Toerisme Veluwe Arnhem Nijmegen, I think also because our management is really keen on working on this data and giving quite a lot of space and also budget to work on this. And because it's top down, I think within our organization, we're quite aware of the data we have, and we can also always apply it even better. We've set our first steps, let's say, towards having the impact and using the data we are collecting, where it felt like the last 2-3 years, maybe it was more like an experimental phase. Now we feel that it has grown to a certain extent where we can say, okay, we will use it more and more in our marketing. But I think because it's top down, and our management also said like this is quite an important focus. It's easier to integrate it, let's say, in our different departments as well. Whereas if it's really on an island and you have to fight for, this is very important. I don't have a feeling like we have that within our organization at the moment, which makes our life a little bit easier. And also integration will make it a little bit easier in that sense.
So it seems like confidence and time is a really key factor in being able to take the next steps with data and be much more data-driven as an organization as a whole. What would you say are the big takeaways that you can share for other destinations who are either in the middle of a similar journey to you, or perhaps still thinking about how they can embark on that journey themselves?
Well, one of the biggest things is I think that the data is never 100% correct.
That's good. It's good to be honest on that.
Yeah.
Where would you say that's kind of surfaced itself in the work that you've been doing?
We have a lot of locations and then you measure something and then you measure it locally, or you count like physically, you go like, it's still not completely exactly the same. So what's happening here? But then if you look at the trend, it's correct. So you go like, it's still okay. And there's a lot of these data sets where you come across certain, and it's the exception, but you have to be aware that there's always exceptions within the data set. And me and my colleague working a lot with this data, we're fully aware of this. So we go like, but there's always a but from our side, which is fine. But it also means that sometimes we're fully aware that the limitations of data, and you still also need a lot of common sense connected to it, basically. So if you say like it's not as black and white as the data sometimes shows, so you have to be fully aware that there might be, it's not 100% correct, and the gut feeling sometimes adding on to it will give you better insights even in the end. So I think one of the biggest lessons learned is that you have a dashboard, it's great, it's awesome, but you still need common sense to make it work.
Yeah, that's a really good takeaway, I think, for others to think about, and perhaps reassuring for those teams that are maybe struggling to get the right insights or develop really useful meaning sometimes from the data, that it perhaps requires a second look, requires that you challenge and question what you're seeing.
Oh, very, very much. You always need to keep asking questions to the data, because there's another thing. Every time you think you have the answer, you have the correct definition, and then you figure out like, oh, this is the exception. But after asking a few more questions, you find out that's not really exception. That's the big issue. We need to solve this in a way. So you always need to be very aware of, yes, you have a data set, but don't use it as 100% correct, but also just keep asking questions, not only on developing further, but also on the set and the things you're already doing. Is it still correct? Or have we gained some new insights from a very specific type of research or from a very specific location that puts everything on hold and go like, oh man, we really need to look at depth in this. And so it's a very long process. So you don't expect that if you start working with this, the next month you have something up and ready, or even a year. It's a continuous process.
Yeah. So you need to be committed for it.
Definitely, yeah. And again, that's why I also mentioned, like, because it's from us, it's top down, and we're fully aware we want to head in that direction. It has to be also, the company has to say like, yeah, this is important, because it is a long-term commitment you're going to do. And so it will have an impact on your budget.
Thanks to Omar for sharing such insightful experiences and knowledge with us today. It's truly impressive to hear about the innovative steps you and the organization have taken towards data-driven destination management. And to our listeners, we hope you found today's episode both informative and inspiring. Data-driven strategies are becoming more and more critical in today's tourism landscape, and hearing firsthand these insightful perspectives really helps us to understand the wide range of choices we face today and the different approaches to solving or addressing the biggest challenges and opportunities ahead for our industry. Don't forget to subscribe for more insightful discussions, and we'll be back soon with a brand new series, together with an exciting lineup of industry experts. We'll be sure to see you then.